House of Pache.
Book of Sariya. Chapter 6. It's come for me. Like, comment, subscribe, buy me a coffee.
Book available on Amazon.
I felt I was going to claw my own skin off, rip fistfuls of hair from my scalp, anything to relieve the suffocating anxiety building inside me like a damned rising from its crypt. I could not remain seated a moment longer, could not cower in this wooden coffin while Fark was out there, thrust into the heart of the nightmare. I had to get out, had to see with my own eyes the death that awaited for me. Flinging open the carriage door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap as the roar and crackle of the inferno up ahead assaulted my senses. The flames danced as if to welcome us to Hell's Gate, casting an orange glow over the freshly fallen snow and lighting the path ahead. The air was thick, filled with smoke and the acrid stench of burning foliage. Each ragged breath seared my lungs, but the icy burn helped ground me, clearing my head of the panicked fog, if only for a moment. I took a few tentative steps forward, my boots crunching in the crisp snow. That's when I saw it. A message, seemingly carved into the very earth itself. The letters etched deeply into the pristine white blanket covering the hillside ahead. It had to be recent work. We'd been traveling through fresh snowfall for days. But as I drew closer, squinting against the wavering light of the flames, the terrible meaning became clear. Judizio. The word judizio was like a blade of ice through my heart, freezing the blood. The tales from my childhood, the cautionary stories meant to keep us from straying, came flooding back. The dread omens, the signs that he was coming, they were all here, unfolding before my eyes. Judizio. The word known by all as judgment. It is written for all to see on every entrance at every church. Inscribed in our minds that judizio will come to all. What will be the judgment of this night? There it was again. The raven soared through the air, its sleek black wings slicing effortlessly against the backdrop of flickering flames. As it approached the fire, the heat shimmered in the air, distorting the world around it. This could not be happening. Not to me. Not in this age of enlightenment and reason. Such evils belonged in the realm of folklore, not the waking world. The crackling flames cast eerie, shifting shadows that seemed to twist and writhe in the darkness, their dance both mesmerizing and unsettling. The scent of smoke hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the crisp aroma of pine, a potent reminder of the wild and untamed nature of the forest. I stood still, halting on the weathered, snow-covered road. The fading light of the early sunset casts long, eerie shadows across the forest floor, the skeletal fingers of pine and aspen trees stretching out like grasping specters. As the distant flicker of firelight moved the shadows, it beckoned me with its warm, inviting glow. My curiosity drove me towards the source of the illumination, yet as I drew nearer, I felt uneasy. Sound muted, other than the thump of my heart, and the breath misting in the cold night air from my mouth. There were no snow tracks that led to the inscripted fire. Snow was pristine and untouched all along the hillside. How was this fire etched into the treeless mount? Focusing in silence, I felt a visceral sense that screamed of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows behind me. I turned my gaze towards the forest, where I bore a weight of evil watching from the depths of the forest. Instincts screamed to run back to the carriage, when amidst the dense tangle of pine and aspen, a pair of luminous blue eyes flashed like sapphires in the darkness. Their piercing gaze fixated upon me with an intensity that imploded my world of transgressions, crushing me in a wreckage of my own making. For a heartbeat, time froze as we locked eyes. A silent understanding passed between us. But as quickly as they appeared, the eyes vanished, swallowed by the depths of the forest as if they were never there. Sariya! A hand seized my shoulder, wrenching me around to face its owner. Fark's eyes were wild, his chest heaving with exertion or fear. I couldn't tell which. Sariya! We need to get back to the carriage now. His voice, disturbed by the deep breaths of exhaustion and coughing of inhaling smoke-filled air. He continued sprinting to the carriage. I could only stand there, petrified, my mind utterly blank, as the shock of what I'd seen threatened to overwhelm me. Fark seemed to realize I wasn't going to move under my own power. He turned and began sprinting back towards our battered conveyance, only to whirl back when he realized I wasn't following. Now, Sariya! He bellowed, the command finally shocking me from my stupor. I ran, my feet finding ground in the snow more by luck than conscious effort. I ran as if the hounds of hell itself nipped at my heels, my ragged breaths tearing at my throat, tears of panic and exertion streaming from my eyes. I couldn't look back, couldn't take my gaze from the blessed sight of the carriage ahead and Fark silhouetted in its open doorway like a sentry against the night. Fark was the last fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. If I could just reach him. Hurry, Sariya! Get in quickly, he urged, reaching out to pull me up the steps and into the dubious sanctuary of the carriage interior. The moment my boots crossed the threshold, I threw my feet forward, kicking them to my front, as if something was going to swipe for my ankles to pull me down and back out from the carriage. Fark slammed the door and threw the bolt, checking it twice to ensure it was properly secured, before sagging back against the wall, huffing deeply to catch his breath. He grabbed me then, pulling me down onto one of the benches across from him, gripping my shoulders almost painfully as I continued to tremble and weep with delayed shock. Please, I begged between ragged gasps. Please tell me nothing is wrong. Please, Fark. But he could see it in my eyes. I knew the truth. All the tales of judgment and reckoning, of the dreaded forces that called the wicked to purge their taint from the world, was here. Parchette and Cloven were missing. Fark's dearest friends, the two men who had been with him through every hardship and adventure. And now they were gone, vanished into the night like curls of smoke on the wind, and we both knew how, but why. Fark leaned forward, grabbing my hands, and his eyes bored into me with an intensity I'd never seen, his voice taking on a grim urgency. I need to know exactly what you saw. The words came out as a defeated, scared fawn that knew his fate was written, more bestial than human. What did you see out there? My body started to shake and I shook my head, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks as I struggled to force the words out against the lump of dread constricting my throat. I don't know. The man... I choked out finally. What man? Fark demanded. The man who fixed the wheel. Understanding flickered across Fark's features, swiftly replaced by an expression of purest dread. What about him? What did you see, Sariya? My words came haltingly, disjointed between ragged breaths as the memory played out before me. His eyes. I looked up into the man's eyes. I met Fark's gaze, seeing my own horror reflected there as I finally gave voice to the darkness. They were black. Both eyes were hollow and black. Fark released my hands as if I'd burned him, recoiling from me as a shudder ran through his powerful frame. He looked away, squeezing his eyes shut as he began murmuring the same words over and over, his voice a whisper. He has come for me. He has come for me. I tensed, trying to make sense of his mantra, of who he could possibly mean. The Strigoi. Why? I thought to myself. Fark was still seated, but his gaze roved the interior of the carriage like a caged animal seeking escape. his breath coming in ragged pants of exertion or fear. When his eyes finally met mine again, I saw the truth shining there. A bone-deep weariness, a resignation to a fate he had been running from his entire life. "Who?" I asked, my voice little more than a broken whisper as I reached for his hand once more. "Who has come for you, Fark?" Once finishing the question, a wheezy feeling started to rush in. My thought process began to slow, and my body started to loosen. Suddenly, I was not so panicked and tense. My heart was slowing to a relaxed beat when worlds seemed to be ending outside that door. Everything around me took on a rosier hue, melting away the stress of our troubles in a light, carefree haze. Why was I feeling almost drunk? I have not had a drink other than the bitter, stale water I shared with Fark. My attention focused back to reality with a slightly less frantic tone when Fark gripped my hand tightly, hunching over our joined fingers as he rubbed his thumb over my knuckles. When he spoke again, it was with a rasp of purest dread. "I feel those eyes you described, fixated on me. And I cannot run or hide from it. I can feel it coming for me like my soul is hunted trying to flee. But my body has nowhere to run." Somewhere outside, a branch snaps underfoot, making us all jump. Silence fills the room as our focus shifts to listening for any outside noise. Pounding hearts can be felt with each passing breath. A soft scratch from outside on the roof intensified the moment. The sound of claws digging in, then hopping across to digging through the roof again. Each step was marked by a delicate hollow scratch, reminiscent of nails gliding over rough wood. The raven seemed to be trying to get in. Fark peers into my eyes for one last time, his teeth grit to try to keep him from speaking his next words, speaking quickly to try and let it all out. "It may not be too late. I wronged too many, and my intentions with you were..." Fark shifts and gathers himself, nervously trying to release the words. He repeats, "And my intentions with you were..." Crash! Something slammed into the carriage with the force of a battering ram. Everything, us, the coach, were lifted up into the air, my head slamming downwards towards the floorboards with stunning force. Then, just as quickly as we ascended, the force pushed us back towards the ground. On the way down, my head was lifted to glance ahead to see a giant hole behind where Fark sat. Only Fark was gone! Slam! The carriage hits the ground. When my vision finally cleared, I could only stare in numb shock at the gaping tear into the carriage's flank. Fark was gone, ripped away into the night, leaving nothing but a smear of crimson against the shattered wood. The carriage continued to rock and shudder, threatening to throw me about like a rag doll until it finally stilled with a bone-jarring crash, one wheel torn free to spin lazily through the snow. I surged to my feet without a thought for my own safety, my mind utterly consumed by one driving need: to find Fark. Stumbling over the debris, I ran out of the ruined conveyance and into the frozen night. "Fark!" I screamed, my voice cracking with desperation as I cast about wildly. "Fark, where are you? Say something!" I ran in dizzying circles, checking beneath our carriage, searching every potential hiding spot, as if he might have merely been thrown clear instead of... No. I refused to entertain that thought. Fark was alive. He had to be. If I could just find him. "Fark!" I wailed again, my voice growing hoarse. My boots skidded in the snow, and I dropped to my knees, clutching the splintered wheel hub to keep from pitching face first into the frozen ground. The fall was from a dizziness that washed over me, my vision swimming as a bone-deep weariness set in. It was that feeling of a sudden drunkenness, only It was much heavier than a shot of rum and taking over quickly. It did not matter. I had to find him. There! Leading away from the wreckage, I saw them. Deep gouges and furrows carved into the freshly fallen snow, as if a body had been dragged towards the tree line. I squinted, forcing my eyes to focus. No footprints visible, other than an eerie story etched into a trail of snow on the ground. My vision was blurring, but I was sure of it. A distant voice was calling out, "Get back to the carriage! It is not safe!" urging me to return to the carriage, but the words were little more than a droning buzz in my ears. Fark's trail was laid out before me, and I knew I had to follow wherever it led. I surged to my feet, swaying drunkenly for a moment before staggering along the tracks. Each step was leaden, my limbs heavy as if dragging through waist-deep water. Pressing on regardless, I was driven by a force greater than mere self-preservation. Suddenly, that prickling sensation on my skin stopped everything. I could feel its watchful presence, an unseen predator studying me from the shadows as I drew inexorably nearer. Pausing to listen, my senses cleared out all chaos. It was just me and whatever was in those trees. My breath slowed to hear for any sudden movements coming from the thickets. Crunch from the snow came from the bottom of my feet, with the slightest shift in weight. When would it seize its opportunity to come for me? Paused as the seconds ticked, each one feeling like hours. My mind and body became too heavy and threatened to drop me into the snow. Thump! Blanketed by flakes of cold white snow, my body crumbled into the powder unwillingly. Looking up to understand, that's when I saw him. A cloaked figure, standing silent vigil between the old pines, as still and unnatural as a statue. Even from this distance, I could make out the massive, motionless bulk at his feet. Fark. Was he dead? The stranger seemed to sense my gaze upon him. Turning, slowly, the silhouette of the forest faced me. Though his features were obscured, I could feel the weight of that soulless stare piercing me like a blade between the ribs, freezing me in place as surely as any spell. A flash of light blue encircled his eyes. If I had blinked, I would have missed it. Startling my fight-or-flight response, it was not enough for me to rise, but enough to see more still forms. I couldn't make out any details, but deep down I knew. Parchette, Cloven, lay limp, thrown onto the back of a huge, dark horse that blended into the night forest. "It's him," I rasped, my lips pulling back in a horrible parody of a smile. As I felt an icy calm descend over me, the final puzzle pieces clicking into place at last. Rolling over on my back, I say again, closing my eyes, readying for a deep sleep, seeing the silhouette of the raven flying over towards the monster in the forest. It's him. The guard who had been calling out finally approached me, his alarmed voice finally penetrating the fog as he glanced to the tree line, looking for some clarifications of what I was saying. His gloved hands reached for my arms to sit me up, readying me to be thrown over his back, my sight bouncing from the waddle of the guardsman on his back, facing the forest as he carried me back to the carriages. It's him. The trees. I was able to squeeze out one last time. There's nothing there, lass, just the forest, that's all. Forget the trees before death catches you out here. But I could only shake my head, letting out a low, keening moan of despair as denial crashed against the walls of my mind like a raging sea. And then, the darkness rose up to claim me, a blessed oblivion to the knowledge that the dread forces of the night were not merely tales to keep children in their beds. This was no dream, no mere nightmare to be woken from with a scream and a pounding heart. This was the cold, eternal reality, and this time there would be no waking from it. I saw him.
Next book. Book of Sariya.
Book available on Amazon.
Buy me a coffee. Support me and the channel to create more content. Go to the link in the description. Like, comment, subscribe.
House of Pache.
Book of Sariya.